It is actually a challenge to create a habit. And that's just habits. But when you come with intentions to actually say, you know what, I need to work through it, then it becomes high performing habits because there's purpose and intent with it. And so high performance at the end of the day with habits is what is the outcome and results of it. It's the follow through process that's important. If you don't follow through to what you have to accomplish, you're going to be plateaued. And so with a habit, you're always constantly evolving. That's why practice doesn't make it perfect. Practice makes it permanent.
Put up your mask, let down your guard, and let's talk about the real. This is the Bring Your Own Mask podcast. All right, you guys, my guest today is a high performance coach. He's not only that, but he's a motivational speaker, author of this amazing book called Motivation Without the Hype. But what's really cool about Gez Perez is that he is not only such a master in high performance, but he's also knowledgeable in such things as HBDI, NLP, DISC, emotional intelligence. And he's just so amazing. He created this motivational app, and he's just here today to share with us all things about motivation without the hype, as well as really how to excel in business, how to really thrive. And so I'm really excited to bring him on. Welcome to the show, Gez.
Thank you so much, Kristen. It's such an honor to be here. I just want to do a quick shout out. You are an amazing human being. And not only that, there's so many things about you that's just so awesome. And it's just a privilege. And I'm grateful to be here on your podcast show. So I'm really excited.
Yay. I'm so excited that you are here. I mean, I was really thinking about the perfect guest to come onto this season of the podcast. And so many of my clients struggle with motivation. And when I first met you, you wrote the book, Motivation Without the Hype. I know you have a podcast on that too. But can you quickly explain to listeners, what is motivation without the hype? What does that mean to you?
I think motivation without the hype really stems through a decision. And a lot of people tend to think that motivation is the hype. And you've probably experienced it yourself where people go to events, seminars, motivational talks, etc. And they feel that energy, but energy is only there only for temporal. And then it all goes back to where they are. But the most important part as to why motivation without the hype, it's all about habits. But it's high performing habits that get you to the next stage. And that's the reason why Motivation Without Hype book, podcast shows to really unpack, unleash, and really do awesome things just by making smart decisions.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because most people think about motivation as exactly what you're saying, going to an event, getting really hyped up, and then going back home and not knowing really how to implement on the tools that they just learned. And when you talk about habits, I actually really want to get deeper into this. So
Oy.
why don't we put down our guard now? Well, let's put our mask and talk about the real, okay?
Okay. Oh, I'm getting nervous now, guys, but this is cool.
So what kind of mask do you have today with you?
I went to it's called Chemist Warehouse in Sydney, Australia, and they have all sorts of clay masks. I said, what's a really good one that's kind of good for men? And she was so stunned. What? So anyways, I'm like, oh, this looks good. So I just grabbed something that's random. It's called Pure Clay. So I'm going to start applying it.
Yeah. Let's kind of backtrack for a second.
Uh-huh.
How did you get into motivation and peak performance? That's my
that's a really good question. So I was overweight when I first started. Yeah, so I was 101 kilos at the time. And I was depressed. I was working full time and I was a project manager handling multiple accounts where it's multi-million Fortune 5 companies. And so I was working odd hours and I had bad eating habits. And this is where we'll talk about some habits. And I was overweight. And how I got into this motivation thing is I was walking to the station, commuting to work. And during that time, I was walking halfway through the stairs. And seriously, I almost kind of had a heart attack. So my heart was pulsating. I was stuck for 5 minutes. And I thought I was going to die, right? I'm like, oh my goodness, my ankles were swollen and I was having a struggle, right? And that's when I said, you know what? I'm going to change my life. I just don't know how I'm going to change my life. But I said, I just need to change my life. And so I went to work and then I came back. And I went to the news agents where they sell newspapers. And I was like, man, I got to find this men's health magazine. And I'm going to find who's got this most, attractive six-pack abs. And again, I had no knowledge at all about personal development. And I had no such knowledge. I said, you know what, I'm gonna get this magazine and found this guy. I'm like, oh, he looks, really attractive. So I cut this picture out. I cut his head off, and I put my head on top of it, and I'll put it on a door. And every single day, I'll see myself having six-pack abs with no knowledge, with no personal development whatsoever. And that was a decisive moment for me. I said, you know what? Okay, now that I made a decision, how am I going to do this? So that's when I started to take place where I said, I need help. I need to get a coach. I need to invest into a coach. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it costs money, right? However, I didn't think about the money part. I thought about an investment that it's going to, benefit myself in the long run. And then I realized that the greatest investment is really yourself. And that's when I start to see a lot of changes. And then within 16 weeks, I completely lost weight, about 30 kilos. And I had my six-pack abs. And then I competed as a fitness model, top 10 into my state. And that's when I started to have transformation, not through my physical side, but more on the mindset side. And then I realized, man, the mindset and the consciousness about everything that plays into effect does play a major part in transformation. And that's how I got started into this journey about motivation.
Wow. Wow. So first of all, Jez, I had no idea that you were overweight. I mean, like, I can't even imagine it, right? So for you to say that, it's kind of, shocking for me. But I think that when someone hits a point in their life where it's kind of rock bottom, and it seems like that was you, right? Because you said that you were about to have a heart attack, or you just felt that you just needed to change. That's
Yeah.
when, real change can actually happen, right? And it's through these rock bottoms that you can actually, start to climb up. So can you tell us more about, how you help people right now when it comes to their mindset and motivation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like for me, how I help people is we dig deeper. You've probably heard of this before that, 80% contributes to your mindset, 20% is all about the mechanics, but it's that 100% of focus and discipline. And it's really hard to be disciplined when there's no certain habits. And so, how I work with people is we dig deeper in terms of going through a discovery and finding out the layers. And not many people love to be in a vulnerable state. And so there has to be a certain care because, they're entrusting your life, right? Pretty much they're coming to you with open trust. And sometimes they do have a bit of reservation. And as a coach, this is where we need to really dig deeper because there's more than meets the eye. You realize, oh my goodness, have I been playing this mindset? Have I been playing this strategy? Have I been playing this since I've made a decision, right? It's so crazy. When you start to have this awareness and then you take responsibility of that awareness, that's when you start to see and be and do of this model where I'm no longer going to be a victim in life. I'm actually going to become more of a champion that I am destined for greatness. I know I can do this and be
Yeah.
above where I'm called to be. And so many times we get dictated by people's opinions. We get dictated, oh, you should be this, you should be that. And so we take those words and we make it as our lives. And people don't realize that it's in their subconscious level that they're playing out this strategy. But when they actually take a seat, step back, become vulnerable, and say, you know what? I need to trust myself. I need to open up. And that's when you start to see a miracle. You start to see, whoa, have I been playing this all my life? And that's when they make a decision to say, I got to pivot my life. And as a coach, that's where we kind of lead them in. It's such a blessing to just be in people's life and to be entrusted with this. So you can actually serve them with all your heart. And I love it. Yeah.
No, and it's funny because I see that you love it, right? Like I love all your content that you put out. Your energy is just so magnetic and attractive. As someone that wants to coach with you, it's almost as if like they want to hire you just because of your energy, right? You have that. So for someone that, let's just say, really wants to make a difference, but they're like, you know what, Jez, I tried the habit thing already, right? Like, I've heard articles of like 21 days to build a habit. Let's just say someone did do that for 21 days and they still couldn't do it. What would you say to someone that it's hard for them to create a habit?
Yeah, it is actually a challenge to create a habit. And that's just habits. But when you come with intentions to actually say, you know what, I need to work through it, then it becomes high performing habits because there's purpose and intent with it. A lot of people tend to think, yeah, I do 21 days and they do. But there's no such of urgency, of intent to say, you know what is the end goal for me? And so high performance at the end of the day with habits is what is the outcome and results of it. And it's daily, right? It's not just, oh, completed 21 days and that's it. There has to be a certain anchor that says, you know what, why am I doing this? Is it because of my family? Is it because of my personal achievements? Whatever it may be. I get this a lot, right? And I'll be real with you. Most of the times people gravitate to an idea and they say, yeah, just I love your passion. I love your energy. I want to emulate that. But we're all wired differently,
Yeah.
right? And so if you unpack and find out what your preferences, your language, who you are as a person, your personality type, then you anchor your strength through that. Then you start to level up in your life because we tend to model someone that may not be us, but the why is completely different. The end goal is really different. So you really need to look back and say, what is your end goal here? So habits say 21 days. I do a 21-day challenge, but it's the follow through process that's important. If you don't follow through to what you have to accomplish, you're going to be plateaued. And so you're always moving, right? With momentum. And this is the reason why people tend to fall off the bandwagon is because there's no follow through process. So you may be asking, well, Jess, how do I do a follow through process? Good question, right? So, say for example, you develop a steady habit, and that's only normal habits.
Mhm.
Then the second stage is called successful habits. Successful habits is where you find, oh, I'm getting a bit of success, I'm finding a bit of stride. However, it's not anchored yet, it's not molded yet, right? And then high performing habits is where, okay, I need to improve what I've learned, what I've honed in. And so it's like certain like a skill, right? It's crafted, it's learned, it's developed. And so with a habit, you're always constantly evolving. That's why practice doesn't make it perfect. Practice makes it permanent,
Mm.
right? Kristen, we just talked about, cussing, right? Just moments ago. I used to have a bad mouth and I used to swear a lot. And there's nothing wrong with swearing, right? You can vent out as much as you want. But for me, as a coach, as a professional manner, I had to change my model. So I used to say, the F bomb, and then I'll say, I'll say fish. So I replaced those words and it becomes a certain habit. And then after that, I said, okay, the end goal for me that to not cuss is so that I can do this in a professional manner, so I can actually talk with clarity, talk with certainty, and talk with confidence. And that was my end goal. And so I replaced the word to replace a habit.
Yeah.
Then I practiced that habit
Right.
by saying certain words. And then I picture myself, okay, this is the end goal to achieve that habit. And now it's pretty much gone. Right. And I love it because now I can talk with clarity and such emphasis and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
follow through.
I especially love when you were talking about how everyone's really different and how
Yeah.
you would coach one person maybe a little bit different than another. And, I'm actually really curious because since we have our mask on, right, it really reminded me. By the way, you look great with your mask.
Oh, thank you.
I can
Like
start
yourself.
like settling in a little bit. So we're gonna have to take it off in just a bit. But I wanted to ask you, is it easier to coach, let's say, someone in like the fitness industry versus like business? Like, is it more difficult or is it the same, like all mindset?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. Like I said, everyone's all wired differently, right?
Yeah.
And so HBD high, which is the model, I use different type of models. So your thoughts, influences your emotions influences your behaviors, and it really influences your actions because everyone's all different, right? And I call it clue spotting. So whenever I coach someone or in a first phase is okay, what type of role are they in? Because sometimes the levels of activities is what they display their behaviors. So the behaviors in a disc model is either the dominant influence, are they stable, or are they compliant? So we go through an assessment tool, we go through a process of that, and I find, okay, cool. So that's his preferred style,
Mhm.
right? So that's the behaviors. Okay, cool. All right. So he prefers this type of language. So if he is, say, in IT or engineering, which I've coached many people who are in this industry, they're just text driven, right? They're so dry that you can't even push through because they're so techy. And so, how am I going to talk tech when I'm not even a geek myself, right? So, there's certain languages and certain tools that you use to engage with them. And that's the reason why I teach my clients how do you engage with people within 30 seconds? How do you have that instant gravitation of that connection within 30 seconds? And through clue spotting and through questions, you get quality answers. And so with IT, I talk with stats and figures. If it's in sales, I talk about the high level, I talk about the high energy, the drive, the purpose, achievement. If it's in HR and marketing, I talk about the creativity. I talk about the people person and how they can, engage and collaborate and do the high fives, Then I talk about the stability, people who are stable, who are in hospitality, that love the care factor, the relationship building. They want the process and procedures. So I'm able to connect and communicate that language, and that actually get into a vulnerable state. And that's when we start to work on their breakthrough. So
Mm.
that's only behaviors, because Kristen, you can be different at work, right? Or in your business, but at home, you're completely different, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm like that. But that's just only the low level. The high level is called thinking preferences, HBDI, which is Herman Brain Dominating Indicator, which is full of words, but I can send you the links what it is. But it
Yeah.
talks about your brain. Your left brain is the logical, the factual, the historical. The right brain is all about the creativity, right? And we fall in certain different models. And so it's not mind reading, nor is it manipulation, but it's more about thinking preferences. So if I'm able to tap into your thinking preferences, what you prefer, then I am 50% of the way of persuasion. Then we're able to say, okay, wow, we can work through this. And if I'm able to understand who you are, what you do, what ticks you off, what are your key strengths, what are your pressure points, what are your stress points, and all that caboodle, then you start to build that bond of trust. And that's when you start to take that level of transformation. And that's how I'm able to work with anybody who are in different type of wire mindset through different type of models. And I'm like, wow, just he understands me, and I'm completely opposite. So even though I'm not techie, I'm not like into the details, I'm able to strategically align with them through their values, through how they think, how they communicate, and I'm able to establish trust for their transformation.
I love that so much. It's really similar to kind of what I do, in which like I analyze
Yeah.
of like astrology, right? But I like
Yeah.
that model because it kind of reminds me also of persuasion and maybe even helping businesses in terms of sales, right? People buy differently as
Mm,
consumers.
absolutely.
But in terms of working with the one-on-one clients and kind of being able to push them, it's so important to understand how they work so that you can actually get there, right? I've worked with so many clients in the beginning where it was hard for me to even be a coach to them because I didn't fully understand them. And so for listeners that are listening right now, I definitely, encourage you to check out Gez after this podcast so that you can really check out his assessment, because I was actually looking at your app and I love that one of the first things that you do is have that 12 question assessment. So that way, it's easier for you as a coach to guide them into the right direction.
Absolutely. And I think that's the new ways of working now is, people can access through a website, but when you have your own app, so if you're a coach or consultant, entrepreneur, solopreneur, server-based entrepreneur, one of the things that I find is like, wow, if I'm able to help someone who doesn't have an app yet, this is just another tool that they can use to access them on a different platform. It's new ways of things. And yeah, I'm really excited. That's the reason why I'm like, man, I should give this a shot. And this is how I produce the motivational app.
I love that. Well, you know what? I actually want to dig even deeper with you and talk about
Yes.
golden rule stuff. So why don't we take off this mask, Bars?
Oish, okay.
A little hardening on you.
It's hard to smile. Okay, let's do this. All right.
Yeah. So, Gez, I'm so curious to know, before you started your business, a lot of my listeners have limiting beliefs, meaning that they want to do something, but they truly feel like they're not enough in order for them to do what it is that they want to do. So, can you share with us, what were some of your limiting beliefs that prevented you from doing what you are doing now?
To be honest with you, there's so many limiting beliefs out there. But for me, money and worthiness was one of the big factor for me is I'm not worthy for this type of wealth. I wasn't worthy of this type of income in my life. And, I was brought up in an Asian background family where they're from the Philippines and they migrated to Australia and they're all hard workers, right?
Mhm.
And so they just work, 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 work for money just for the family, right? So I thought, man, working for money is actually hard, right? And I had that limiting mindset that money's too hard. I can't get through this. And then the next factor for me was spiritual and money. Growing up in a church, oh, it's okay to be content to where you are. And I just had just mixed emotions about what money's all about, that money's too greedy. You shouldn't have enough. You should just have just enough,
Mhm.
but no certain abundance. And that was my limiting beliefs, money and worthiness and spiritual and money. That
Yeah.
was my biggest take.
That's such a common one because, so many people really want to make a big impact and change the world. They want to start businesses. They want to really go into sales, right? But just like you, I went through the same thing. As an Asian American, my dad really taught me that you want to be humble, you don't want to be too greedy. And so imagine, me wanting to make more money and change the world, but then deep down, I have this split energy where I'm like, wait, there's something wrong here. So I'm sure this is something that you were constantly fed as well, right? As a child. By the way,
100%.
you have such a great glow up right now.
Wow. Oh man, it's so hard to take it off. That's okay. I'm almost there.
No worries, no rush. This interview is still happening, by the way. So can you tell us what was your personal breakthrough? How did you get over that feeling of like, okay, wait, I have to be, this coach, I have to make money, but then I also feel like shitty about money.
Okay. So remember how I had my personal transformation?
Yeah.
I said to myself, oh man, I'm working in a certain career. I said, I want to earn this type of income. So earning 6-figure paycheck month to month. And I was like, you know what? I want to achieve this. Worked so hard for it, but I wasn't fulfilled. Still had that belief system. Isn't that crazy? And a lot of people, particularly with men, are striving for greatness through this paycheck. They reach it, but yet they don't still feel fulfilled. And I didn't feel fulfilled at all. I just felt like I was in a rut race trying to earn my living and just pressurized to just earn something, but nothing fulfillment, nothing at all. And I still had this. It's one of the challenges that men face is that you reach what you needed to reach, but yet you're not fulfilled and you still have these money beliefs. It's
Oh,
crazy, right?
yeah.
And it's not until you have that awareness. And so that personal transformation I have, like losing the weight, was really just the mindset, was just the internal. Because if you change the internal, it's always going to reflect on the external, right? So the external is the output. What you put in is what you're going to get outward. And it's through that mindset where I start to identify. And I had to have a coach. So having a coach and mentor is crucial. You got to have one. And don't ever think, oh my gosh, it's too expensive. Because I'm telling you, you need a different perspective and you need a different lens. It's like this. We get hit by a brick wall, right? We're hitting our head, right? Because we only see what we see in front of us. But
Yeah.
then a coach or a mentor who sees it from a different angle goes, wait a minute, you don't need to bang your head. Just get a bulldozer, go there and just hit the damn wall, right? So different perspectives. And so this limiting belief was, money and worthiness. And like, all right, I got to change that. So how did I do that? I listed down everything that I said to myself. And yet again, I'm like, I don't want to do this. It's too much effort. I don't have time for this. Who has times to write down about themselves and what I'm thinking, blah, 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 blah. But thank God I did, right? So you know what? I want to do this for myself. So I list down every limiting belief, everything I said to myself, everything that I see myself. And that's the problem, right? We create a problem that's not even a problem yet, but then it becomes a problem because we see it happening. It's like, oh my gosh, this and that. And then moments ago, oh my goodness, I just did what I just said I was doing and I see it into fruition. So if we're able to step back, list out everything, and that took me about literally 30 minutes. If you can invest 30 minutes of your time listing all your limiting beliefs and how to replace that,
Yeah.
it's going to change your life. And that's the start of the process of how to let go of my limiting beliefs, because abundance is everywhere, right? And you know this. Abundance is everywhere. It's plentiful. If you just open your eyes, right? And have that awareness. And if you channel that abundance, because I'm a firm believer that we create things, right? And not being religious or anything like that. So, God is the creator. We are his creation, but we are creative, right? So like this, an example, God didn't say to Adam, Adam, hey, build the table, right? He didn't say that, right? Adam, he had a piece of wood, right? And he cut the damn wood and built something out. So I know it's a funny analogy, but it's something like that where abundance is here. It's everywhere, but we just need to create that into motion. And if you have, positive belief, empowering belief that you can, you will, you must, and you create that, then you become it and you start to see it happening in front of your eyes.
Yeah. And I love that you said that analogy. And I love particularly how you were so vulnerable about, you're a man, obviously, and that you were making the amount of money that you were making, and then you were still not feeling fulfilled. And it's interesting because, for a long time, a lot of my clients were women, but then lately I've been getting more male clients as well as male listeners. And one of the things that I've noticed that men struggle with in particular is, you know, hustling where they are able to achieve, right, outwardly, but internally they struggle with fulfillment. And I really want to talk more about that because, part of the podcast is self care. And I feel like men don't really do that a lot for themselves, right? Because, like, in a way, society has made it where they're the provider, right? Like, they're the provider, they're the breadwinner. Obviously, we're 21st century, so there's a lot of women also bringing home the bacon. But how can, like, a man today really take care of himself and be making a lot of money?
I think first things first is seeing yourself. For me, self care is 200% needed. And you might think, oh, Gez, aren't you this type of person? This is pretty much your personality type. No, it isn't, right? Well being is really important. How can you operate at a higher level if you're not looking after yourself?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a certain ritual, right? And it takes time, but I had to start somewhere, right? And so, self care is really important. And a lot of men tend to think being macho, being the provider, being the male alpha, right? Oh, I don't need this type of crap, right? But what you're doing is that if you want to operate at, say, at the 10 level, then there's certain habits, certain things that you need to do to operate that. But if you cannot service yourself, it's like a car, right? A maintenance car. Sometimes, right? As a man, right? We're made for Bugatti, but we put our engine in a Toyota Corolla, right? It's the truth, right? We put our engine, our whole type of being into a Toyota Corolla, and that's only going to take us to A to Z. But we're built for a Bugatti. We're built for a Lamborghini. I'm not being more materialistic here, but from an analogies perspective, like
Sure.
this type of example is that we're built for greatness. And so if we build and put ourselves into a Lamborghini as example, there's certain
Mhm.
maintenance that you need to do to operate at that level. And so for self-care is, hey, when was the last time you had like a massage? For me, I have once a month, I have a massage. When was the last time that you actually sat down only like 2 minutes? Okay. Guys can't even last for 5 minutes. So I coach my clients. I say, just do 2 minutes, just being grateful. Go to your smartphone, smart notes, just say, I'm grateful for my wife, or I'm grateful for my partner. I'm grateful that I have a job. I'm grateful that I got money. Whatever it is, just
Yeah.
2 minutes of your time. Gratitude. Facial is really important. What? For me, I do facials as well. Like, you might think, oh my gosh, like it's your person. It's not. You got to look after your whole well being. As in, like, if you can look fresh and be fresh, then you're presentable, right? Then you have confidence in yourself because, people look at you and they judge you straight away. But it's not about that. It's all about if you're confident with yourself, you can conquer the world. So for facials, I do cleanser, toner, icer, moisturizer. I know it sounds crazy, but you know what? It only takes 3 minutes. For me, I'm a ninja and I'm done, right? Affirmations and meditations and calmness. And that's all my part of my day. And exercise is really important. But for men, if you want to make it simple, as I'm a simple guy, is, just start looking after yourself. And that is, can you do a bit of exercise, just a little bit of your day? If it's just push ups, just walking around and start saying positive words about yourself. And that's affirmations. That's the first thing that I will say because, once you speak to the universe, it goes back to your subconscious mind. The more that you say it, the more that you believe it. And so affirmations is the first step to actually go into a vulnerable state to doing self care. And then once you start to feel more confident, and there are certain steps that I do to share to the guys to say, look, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's pretty much it. So
Yeah.
step one is really affirmations. And they're all like 5 minutes. If you can spend 5 minutes of your day, you're done. But then you start to get more into habits. And yes, so there's certain formulas, but that's first step is affirmations. It's really important.
I love that. Well, it's funny because I actually heard last night that LeBron James spends about $1 million a year on
His
his,
body, yeah.
like, for women it's really easy for us to talk about self-care, and even for women we even sometimes feel like we're not enough to take care of ourselves. But I feel like with men especially, it's more of like, well, like, we're supposed to be masculine, right? And like we need to like just like push through. But I love that you say that you also do that too, because it gives the opportunity for men to realize that, hey, you know what, like my confidence does matter, and taking care of myself on an energetic level is going to
Absolutely.
show through, right? Even on camera, right? Like I didn't know you did facials, but I can see that you do because you're glowing, right?
Even yourself.
Yeah, I do all the time, clearly. But do you mind actually, Jez, can you finish your
Please.
steps? Because you said number one was affirmations, just so that they can take away from this interview. What are the other steps in terms of personal self-care and abundance?
Yep, good idea. Okay, so in outwardly, you can be masculine. That's fine. But inwardly, you can actually tap into your inner being. And that is like self-care. And you're exactly right. LeBron James spends $1 million on his body because to operate at a higher level, to do what he does, is that his body, his function needs to be at that pace. And that also translates into our personal life. That translates into our working life or our business life. And if you have that, all the mechanics starts flowing, right? So number one, yep, you need affirmations. Number two is you need to start practicing gratitude. But that gratitude is pretty much probably end of the day that I say
Yeah.
before you go to bed is gratitude because you want to reflect on the day. But number two for me is meditation, calmness.
Mhm.
I think that's really important. A lot of men, they're so into rush mode that they don't come into that Zen mode where they need to stay calm at a calm state. Because I'm telling you now, for men, as soon as they walk out the door, there's challenges, there's issues, there's problems, there's fires to be put out. And subconsciously, they're going out there in their minds, oh my goodness, I got to do this, blah, 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 right? So many things that comes to their minds. We're not like you, right, Kristen? We're not like you. Like for girls, they can think 10 million things and they can execute 10 million things. For men, it's simple, one way. That's it. The only thing about one thing, right? They can't process too much information, and for the ladies, they can think so many 10 scenarios and like, okay, what about this? I'm like, well, I never thought of that, right? But for men, it's not like that. They like focus on one thing, they fail, that's okay. They focus on another thing, cool, it works. So they go through that way, right? So you need calmness and you need meditation. So that's going to set you up for the day. And number three is getting into exercise routine. And that's really important. So you're not here to get a six-pack abs. It's all about strength. It's all about mental toughness because when you go into exercise mode, whether it's in the gym or at home, you're going to build consistency and you release the endorphins and you feel great. Like, wow, I've conquered this. Like, yeah, I did my workout. I feel great. It was only 10 minutes, but that's okay. And you build that resilience, right? You built that. So that's number three. So exercise. Number four is really get into action mode. Everything that you set for the day, execute. So for men, like I coach, I say, hey, I know that you want to be at success. These are the habits that high performing, successful leaders do. And that's playing out the day. So focus on three things that's going to give you return in value. Don't worry about the task that kind of is low level. You can delegate that, whatever, automate it and systemize, et cetera, et cetera. What are the three things that you can take action today that's going to make you fulfilled?
Mhm.
That's really important because that's the missing element for men is like, I've done so much work, but have I done something that's worthwhile?
Yeah.
Have I done something that's really with meaning and fulfillment? And that's really important. That's number four. And number five is gratitude. And I always say, hey, don't spend 10 minutes. I don't want to sound too personal here, but if you're in the toilet, this is for men. If you're in the toilet and you're doing a thing, do it there because there's no distractions at all. Don't go to social media. Take the time out to be grateful. Take a moment. You know what? I can leave it just there. But I tell you what, there's about 12 men that I coach, and they say, Jez, this gratitude is the best thing ever. I'm like, I only tested this out, right? I'm like, because I'm telling you now, like, Jez, I can't do this gratitude. I have no certain time, right? But I have time to go and do that thing. So I know it sounds crazy and funny, but the results that I get from the men is like, Jez, it's changed my life. I feel so good. And I said, 1 minute of gratitude. That's it.
Yeah.
And the responses that I get out of that, they feel really good. And so you got to find what works. And it works for that. So that's one of the strategies. So, guys, if you're listening to this podcast show and you haven't done it yet, this could work for you. But it's the habit of being grateful. And if you're in that gratitude attitude type of mode, it's going to change your life. And that's
Well,
part of self.
I was going to say that if you're going to be doing your gratitude while you're on the toilet, it's actually probably healthy for you too, because you're calm, you're like in a flow state. It makes sense as to why it's been changing their lives. Let's just put it that way.
I know. Like I told, all right, let's brainstorm. why can't you do gratitude for 1 minute? Oh, because as soon as I get home, I gotta get fed. Blah, 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 blah. I gotta do this, gotta do that. I gotta go into working mode. I'm like, all right, let's dig deeper. Okay, when is the time that you actually set time that isn't work mode, etc.? Oh, well, it's this time. Okay, and I'm like thinking, try that. So in my head, like, oh, okay, why don't you try that? And it worked for him. And then the other client of mine says, hey, try this technique, kind of figure this out, see if it works. And out of 12 clients of mine who are men, it works. So, if that's something that you want to tell your partner, tell him, say, hey,
Oh
have
yeah.
you done your gratitude yet?
Yeah, for all the women that are listening, right? Your partner, or your fiance, your husband,
Absolutely.
have them listen to this podcast because I totally get it because my fiance is the same. Like he spends a good time in the bathroom. So I mean, hey, why not use
Yeah,
that?
I know, right? It's called multitasking.
I love it. Well, Gez, this actually brings me to one of my last questions, and that is, what are you most excited about for the rest of this year, right? We're kind of like midway right now. So what are some exciting projects that you're working on that you're hoping to launch by the end of the year? Share with us what you're working on.
Okay, so what I'm really excited is I've just launched the motivation app. So it's available on Apple and Android. So if you click on like Gez Perez Thrive, it'll pop up there. That's what I'm really excited about. And I'm creating a blueprint for coaches and consultants. I thought I'm pivoting in a different way for this particular area
Yeah.
is to provide an avenue. If you're a coach, solopreneur, service-based entrepreneur that wants to have their own app at affordable rate, I kind of cut out the middleman. I'm like, oh man, they're making so much money out of milking people because they don't have that certain knowledge. And like, wow, I tap into that knowledge. Okay. So I bridge the gap and I don't do the work, but I find people who can actually do it at a very affordable rate and that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. So that's another way that I'm kind of actually pivoting for other coaches to have their own app so they can actually elevate their branding. And then I've got two programs that I'm launching at first week of July, and that is the solopreneurship program. So number one program is high performing solopreneur that avoids the burnout. And program number two is the rise of the solopreneur. And that is to how to grow your business fast and how to outgrow that with all the smarts. So that's pretty much it. I think people are into the solopreneurship and into that journey. And I want to provide strategic proven methods to earn your Ks or monthly thousands of dollars consistently into your bank account in a predictable and a scalable way. So that's launching first week of July.
I love that.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I even looked at the app before this interview. Like, let me check him out and see what he has on there. So it's amazing, guys. So if you're listening, make sure you check out Jez's app because I just love how you created an assessment in the beginning. It's very personalized in that way. And, for any coaches and consultants that want some more personal branding and really elevating your brand, I feel like having an app definitely sets you apart, right? Because not a lot of people have their own app. So I love it.
Absolutely. And lastly is for this podcast show, if you're interested, I'm actually doing a complimentary discovery session where we built out a game plan, whether it's in your life or business. So I'm happy to do that complimentary session as well. So for
Yeah.
about half an hour, just with me, I work with you and we can put a game plan, no charge at all. It's just a set out, okay, this is the game plan and it's up to you guys. So yeah, I'm happy to do that and really contribute to your community and add value to that because your community is awesome. And I love what you do, Kristen. It's amazing. So grateful of our friendship.
Thank you. So I'm going to have all those links below so you can find that. And then finally, Gez, where do you hang out most on social media or like maybe your website, just so people can keep in touch with you in case they have any questions?
Yeah. So through LinkedIn and through Facebook
Okay.
and through the motivation app, there's a connect button there. You can connect with me directly. Instagram is being revamped. So I'm really excited to relaunch that again. And yeah, I'm really excited. So yeah, I'm everywhere. So reach out to me and all the notes will be provided on the show notes. So all the links there.
Yep. He did my job for me.
Oh, sorry.
For a moment, I was like, wait, am I on Jez's podcast? I love it. Well, Jez, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been such a pleasure. I love seeing
Likewise.
you, with a face mask and
I know.
being so vulnerable with it. You look really extra glowy today. And I think
Same to you.
with it. Thank you.
No worries.